And we are going to move to our next speaker. It's my pleasure to present Getrude Gwenzi, who will talk about her work in Zimbabwe. Getrude is a research associate in the Department of Social Work at the University of Johannesburg. She is interested in the meaning of family for children in alternative care and caregivers in Zimbabwe. She is a member of INTRAC.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to get the opportunity to share this, my research with such a big platform. So thank you so much for the opportunity. My interest in care living research started actually after I finished my undergraduate studies. I worked as a residential social worker. So I'm based in South Africa, but I'm originally from Zimbabwe. So my research has been focused on the Zimbabwean caregivers. So when I was working as the residential social worker, I realized that the transitions from the residential facility was very complicated for the children that I was working with as a social worker. So that prompted my study to actually study further what happens during the transition. So today I want to share my PhD study. I recently completed my PhD last year in Hong Kong. And for my PhD, I focused on the meaning of family for caregivers. And the gap and the interest really came from the fact that there has been no studies that have just focused on the meaning of family in the Zimbabwean context in general. What does family even mean for young people or for children? But more so, no one has really asked caregivers about their interpersonal relationships, who they consider as family and what is actually family. So I was interested in how they define family and who would they consider to be family. So the methodology that I used in my study was to get them to do an activity where they write family lists. So thinking about who is your family, and then would go into an interview where would talk about reasons for inclusion or exclusion of somebody as a family member. So what was interesting to find out during my PhD study was just how they think about family and how they construct those meanings, considering the separation experience, considering the time that they spend in care institutions. And one thing is just the taken for granted assumptions of what family is. Because when you look at children who've lived in separation for so long, we just assume that how they view family will be the same as those people who grow up with their biological families. So that prompted my interest to find out how would they actually just think about the family as a social category of their relationships. So I was coming from the sociological understanding of family, the new sociology of family, thinking about family display, family practices, and trying to see how that would play out in the African context, particularly in the Zimbabwean context. Would they also define family based on the changes in family that are happening in the Western world, or would there be more of a cultural influence? So I'll share a bit of my findings due to time limits. So what I found was that there's still a lot of the traditional definition of family within the Zimbabwean context, and that is based on the culture. The cultural aspect of family is still very pervasive, and I was interested to find out it's the same in Jordan as well when Rawan was presenting. So the cultural meaning of family was very, very dominant. So thinking about the heteronormative idea of family as two parents and their children. So the traditional understanding of family was what most caregivers actually defined family as. And even though we were considering the separation and the fact that some of them don't even know their family members, we still found them thinking about their biological family members, although they were absent, and they still defined them as family and included them in their family lists. And the cultural aspect also came up when they were talking about during their age now, because I found them after they have left care for about 5 to 10 years. So some of them were thinking about getting married, or they had actually gotten married, and they found out that family, the biological family, due to the culture, when they want to get married, they have to go now and search for the biological family. So if there had been estranged relationships or there had been a breakdown in the relationship, they still needed the family to perform certain cultural rites such as marriage. So that was very complex and challenging for care leavers. So when they started thinking of that, it complicated their understanding or definitions of family, and even trying to think about starting their own families. They constantly have to keep thinking about that biological family. So it's like that tie, whether it was severed before, they needed to kind of get it back again. And I found that defining family during the living care period was also very interesting, because care leavers were able to think about who was there for them when they were living care, and that was very important for them. Who supported me, who was there for me. So their definitions of family stopped being just about blood relations. So I had a group of care leavers who would say that my family is who supported me when I left care. So that was quite interesting, because that now moves away from the biological blood relation type of family. Also just looking at non-blood relations as family. So they would describe their housemates, their previous caregivers as family, because they grew up with these people. And one group I want to mention is those who were abandoned at birth. They had no other family to think of besides the family in the institution, as they are known in Zimbabwe. So the family in residential care that they lived with is the only family they know. So even if they don't have blood relations, that's the family that they defined. So just to conclude, so I was just trying to come up with a way of understanding family, considering a group that hasn't been explored in terms of what are their views, even particularly in the Zimbabwean context, considering the separation experience, considering them living in the institution, and how all those factors come together to think about who is family, what is family, and to get away from the taken for granted assumptions that we have as people who have not been in care. So it was quite challenging to see how they would feel, how they would think. And it also showed the fluid nature of family relationships for care leavers. They were constantly changing. So like I said, whoever supported them, whoever was there for them, they actually moved closer to that person and formed a relationship that could be described as family. And another thing was that these constructions of family were very emotional, deeply embedded in psychosocial issues and the experiences that they go through with family members in the past. Those things would still come up, and it was hard to separate them. Yeah, so that's what I can share for now. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Getrude, for a very interesting presentation.
Sorry, I didn't get the question.
If you want to refer to how the international work helped your specific work in Zimbabwe, for example.
Okay, yes, definitely. I feel like because of the limited literature from my country on care living, I had to draw so much from the West to guide my study. And unfortunately, we have to rely more on that because they've published more than we have, although our cultural aspects will definitely then bring out the differences. But definitely we've drawn a lot. I had to draw a lot from the international literature.
Thank you very much. So now I'm going to ask Getrude a few questions, and I'm really sorry that we don't have time for all of your questions, but we'll try our best. So Getrude, the concept of family, does it include other people in care? For example, young people in residential care, maybe they become siblings, and if this relationship continuing during life, namely after care, what did you know about this?
Okay, thank you for that question. So in my study, I did find, like I was mentioning, housemates. So they mentioned their housemates. So by that, they were referring to the people they used to live with in the institution. So they would describe them as, you know, this is my brother, this is my sister for life. So they still had those relationships. So that definitely came up.
Thank you. And another issue, how culture influenced your participant construction of family?
Culture was a very big part, like I mentioned, when it comes to thinking about marriage. and then they had to go and search for the absent biological family or the family that they were separated from for so many years. Because the marriage rights in Zimbabwe, you need particularly your paternal family. There needs to be a representative from your paternal family when you're doing the lobola, which is the bride price paying. But I found some cases where, in the absence of the biological family, the caregivers that they used to live with would step in as guardians. So that was accepted, but there'd be another, sort of process to go through in order for them to be given the right to be part of that marriage right. Another concept of culture was when they defined family according to what they grew up seeing. So some of the responses, they would say, this is what I was taught in school, or this is what we know family to be. So some of the definitions would be coming from their culture and their surroundings, not necessarily their own reality, but they would give responses based on what they see other people's families looking like. So it was quite a challenge to now separate, okay, which one is your reality and which one is just coming from the cultural definition. Yeah.
And actually, a more very interesting question is did you publish your work? Can you share some of your work that you did right until now?
I did manage to publish this K-liver paper that I'm presenting. So the link, I think it should be there on the INTRAC website or the Anchor website, but I'll make sure that it's there for those who want to see it. So far, from the family study, that's the one paper that I've published so far in the special issue that Adrian and John were talking about. So it's one of the papers in that special issue.
Okay, thank you very much.